with all due respect to both of them, I don't think the Attorney General does much in this area on this case without concurrence from the governor. I've never seen them split yet. And so I assume that she was not out on a limb defending it in court. Lawyers file things with the representation that they honestly believe what they filed, and they defended this case, this district, this racial gerrymander, 12 times, 12 different steps before they flipped in August. Look, I bless their heart. I believe in the converted, and I'm glad to know that they were converted, but don't tell me you weren't a Roman before that.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
The secret to losing weight 2 times faster has gone viral. See the transformations hundreds of thousands of men, women, and teens are experiencing around the world with the Slender Eyes drops. These homeopathic hormone-balancing drops are proven to control appetite, support thyroid function, improve energy, boost mood, and increase metabolic rate. To learn more about the drops or other incredible natural wellness and lifestyle products, email me at danielle@freedomstate.us or visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. All right, folks. Well, I have no idea why we got kicked off, but welcome to the State of Freedom. I was just saying that we are committed to faith in the Constitution and giving voice to truth, living with courage, and taking action. I was reminding us what day it is, Thursday, October 16th, 10 a.m. Central. And I was saying that I am Danielle Walker. I'm joined by my friend and fellow host, Chris Alexander. We are marching forward despite the tech gremlins. We're coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. You can always catch us later on audio-only platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast. Well, joining us today is a friend of the show and a man who is an absolute gift to our state and our nation. Paul Hurd, let me bring in Paul, is a constitutional attorney. He's an expert in redistricting, and he was leading the legal team that challenged the state's drawing of the 6th district of the 2024 U.S. congressional map. That case made it to the Supreme Court, and arguments were heard on it yesterday. He's going to give us a readout of what happened and where he thinks the justices will go. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Danielle, great to be here. Chris, good to see you again.
Welcome,
as well.
sir.
And, we had a busy day yesterday.
Yeah, before we get into it, let me read the scripture of the day. It is
Right.
Ephesians chapter 4, verses 21 through 25. And it says, if you have really experienced the Anointed One and heard his truth, it will be seen in your life. For we know that the ultimate reality is embodied in Jesus. And he has taught you to let go of the lifestyle of the ancient man, of the old self-life, which was corrupted by sinful and deceitful desires that spring from delusions. Now it's time to be made new by every revelation that's been given to you, and to be transformed as you embrace the glorious Christ within as your new life and live in union with him. For God has recreated you all over again in his perfect righteousness, and you now belong to him in the realm of true holiness. So discard every form of dishonesty and lying, so that you will be known as one who always speaks the truth, for we all belong one to another. And another way the Bible talks about this is in Matthew chapter 7, verses 16 to 20, when he says that they will know you by your fruit. And the context of that scripture was he was explaining to the disciples how to judge false prophets, how to identify them. But the test is true for all of us. And it is, are we allowing the Word of God to change us and refine us every day? Are we becoming more like Jesus as he reveals more of his character and his kingdom ways to us? And even if our routine seems very monotonous, even if everything around us seems the same, our inner life in Christ should be vibrant and dynamic, and because we are designed to be thriving and blossoming, bearing fruit, and changing for the better every single day.
Yeah, that's a tremendous scripture, Danielle, this morning. And the part about bearing fruit, it's supposed to bear fruit in our lives, and by the fruit, other people will know who we are.
Yeah.
And, Paul Hurd, I think it's interesting that you're reading from Paul this morning, because our guest's name is Paul, the one and only Paul Hurd. As you said, Paul has just been up at the U.S. Supreme Court making final arguments on this racial gerrymander down here in Louisiana that was passed in the special session in January of 2024 by our Republican legislature. Paul, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, sir, for this second, maybe the third time on the State of Freedom.
Hey, it's great to be here. Louisiana, I think, had a great day. I want to thank co-counsel that's working this case with me and his firm together, Edward Grime, Greim, for those who need good constitutional lawyers. He's out of Kansas City. I'm his Louisiana counterpart in this case, and he did a great job yesterday in the oral argument. Co-counsel was there at the table. I was about 10 feet from Justice Kavanaugh, 15 from Justice Thomas and Roberts. So it's the layout is just as you see the pictures. What's interesting, you may not know, is there are no pictures ever been made of a court in session with the justices in their chairs.
Really?
Now, there was one in, I think it was 1931, that was surreptitiously done, and I'm afraid that guy went to jail. But the point being, you will always see that picture of the Supreme Court courtroom. The chairs are always empty. They will not let you take any video, still shots or video of the actual proceeding.
Why is that, Paul? Why is there? I understand the no video, but why no still pictures?
Because everything they do is important, and therefore you're going to have the natural individual disruption. I think one day they will have after the fact video. Look, the technology world's not going to regress. It's going to expand, but you create stars and not intellect with those cameras. You just turn it into a stage and not a court.
That's a great point.
The justices, the lawyers would be just as inclined to go that direction. They'll do it one day, but it won't be soon.
Yeah.
And
that
now
reminds
started
me
where they'll do the audio, and you can hear the audio live. And they used to
that's exactly right. That's what I was going to say. Anybody who wants to go back and listen to yesterday's arguments can do it on
it's recorded and it's reviewable.
The Supreme Court website. Yeah. Well, let's get right, as you would say, Paul. Let's get right to the lick log here. A little history and then I have a specific question. But a little history for our listeners. So, January 2024, the legislature goes in. And in response to a preliminary finding by an Obama-appointed federal judge, draws up this district that you testified and many others testified was a classic racial gerrymander, SB 8. The governor, by all indications, and the attorney general supported that legislation. We testified against it. You testified against it. And it looks like to us that they were defending this new racially gerrymandered map all the way up to the Supreme Court, even after a 3-judge panel that you argued before declared in April of 2024 that it was unconstitutional and it could not be used in any future elections. So here we are winding forward about 18 months later, and Supreme Court final arguments have been made. And just yesterday, the governor says the only reason we have an opportunity to make corrections here is because of the hard work that Liz Muriel and I have been doing while I was Attorney General in 2022. Landry said, we have defended the map, presumably the original 2022 map that you said was constitutional, all the way to the Supreme Court. Is that true? Is that borne out by the record?
The short answer is, oh, heck no. I saw a release by the AG who said that they had always advocated that this was an unconstitutional act. It's not what she told the legislature. It's not what they told the Supreme Court. It's not. I started trying to just make a list of each filing, each step in the proceeding. They out of the blue advocated for this new racial gerrymander. They passed it. They defended it in court. They went to the U.S. Supreme Court after we won, after the district court held that this was a racial gerrymander. It's unconstitutional. Liz Muriel went to the Supreme Court and said, we need this district anyway. Let's us use it in 2022. And they defended it enough to get a stay, an order from the Supreme Court to our court to say, let them use it while we decide if the district court is correct while it's on appeal.
Yeah.
So
2024, you're talking 2024, not 2022, right?
All that happened in 2024.
Yeah.
And then, in 2024, before the elections, otherwise, we were within a day or two in district court in 2024 of having a hearing and the local district court drawing a new interim plan. Obviously would not have had 5 majority minority districts because you can't I don't believe the facts will show that you can do it constitutionally. But the point is, they went to the U.S. Supreme Court and stopped our local court from ordering this district not to be used.
Yes.
And so they created it, they advocated it, they enacted it, they defended it in court, they lost. They went to the Supreme Court and said, oh, we lost on the merits, but we wanted it in effect anyway, and they got that order. And so we would never have had this district used had the governor. I don't think, and with all due respect to both of them, I don't think the Attorney General does much in this area on this case without concurrence from the governor. I've never seen them split yet. And so I assume that she was not out on a limb defending it in court. Lawyers file things with the representation that they honestly believe what they filed, and they defended this case, this district, this racial gerrymander, 12 times, 12 different steps before they flipped in August. Look, I bless their heart. I believe in the converted. And I'm glad to know that they were converted, but don't tell me you weren't a Roman before that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
now,
but
Paul,
it's a little bit different. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit different when you're arguing that you're a cradle believer, which is simply not the case here. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, and it was funny. Even one of the justices, as soon as the gentleman Ben Agabera stood up to do the argument for our Attorney General, Liz Muriel, stood up after he made his initial presentation, which is the way it goes. I believe it was Justice Thomas, who Ben had clerked for at the U.S. Supreme Court, said, Counselor, can you explain to me exactly how y'all are on the side saying this is unconstitutional when everything you filed before that had said that it was constitutional? Can you explain that?
Paul, I was going to ask you, I was literally going to ask you how awkward it was to be arguing the same position as your opposing counsel.
So, it was it was an August road to Damascus moment.
I'm really glad they called him out, tholl. That's one thing Chris and I were talking about.
But the other thing is, I do believe, as a lawyer, it discredited their logic and their argument, because they've been on both sides and each time said the other side was constitutionally wrong. Our Constitution didn't change this week. It didn't change in August. Look, this was in this way I've tried to describe it. The whole enactment of SB 8, which includes the crazy district, has been a dark constitutional chapter in Louisiana governance. We stood up, and for whatever reason, we enacted a grossly unconstitutional structure, and their hand was called on it.
Yeah, and to your credit, Paul, and to Bert Calais' credit, and of course I testified against it as well.
Yeah.
But you were very clear, very articulate while this SB 8 legislation was pending, I think before the House and Senate Governmental Affairs Committee, as to why this is not going to pass constitutional muster. And it fell on deaf ears at our legislature. Do you care to speculate why that is? Why was the legislature so beholden, or felt like they were so beholden to a preliminary ruling of a federal court judge, and did not go into court and fight on this? Why do you think that is?
I'll leave that to them to have decided. Look, brand new governor at the peak of his political strength comes in, and there was a calendar problem. The only order that existed at the time of December 23 and early 2024 from the local district court that the governor and the attorney general were fighting with. The only order that existed at that point was, please, you are ordered to come to court on the first week of March and defend this case on the merits. The only order that exists was come to trial, and it's the only order they didn't honor. And the court said you can either reenact something else, or you're ordered to come to court and defend this one. And they chose not to defend the district that they had. There's been a couple of switcheroos in this case, and the answer at the end of the day is this crazy constitutional chapter closed yesterday in front of the Supreme Court. It is passed from our hands to theirs, and we will get a decision from them on how to properly reorder our congressional districts, and it's going to reflect directly on several other ongoing attempts to restructure our state house and our state senate. And this will be helpful.
Yeah. And what was your sense of the arguments yesterday, Paul? You have some reflections, some favorite moments?
Well, it was interesting in the sense that I really give the Supreme Court credit, because it seemed like all structural, methodological, jurisprudential issues and rules and principles, everything was on the table. Everything was discussed, because if I can say anything about the reason we had that hearing, was the Supreme Court's focus was give this court anything that will help us better apply the 14th Amendment that says thou shalt not discriminate based on race, the 15th Amendment that says you shall not have your vote denied or abridged because of race, and how can we enforce that? That's really, they left it wide open, and you can tell each justice, as a lawyer, I can sink deep into this constitutional swamp, and I don't think that helps the listeners. But there's issues about whether or not this thing is so racially based that it can't pass the 14th Amendment, because you can't violate the 14th Amendment as a remedy to cure something under the 14th Amendment. And that's really not, if you think about it, that's actually not true. And the problem with Section 2, now I'm going to do it, I'm sorry.
You're talking about, to be clear, Paul, you're talking about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that the judge said, original judge said that our original district probably violated. That's what you're talking about, Section 2.
Well, all right, there's yes and no. There's a case before they do the districting, and that district court was applying Section 2. Section 2 is supposed to be a corollary of the 15th Amendment. 15th Amendment says, thou shalt not be denied or abridged your right to vote based on race. Section 2 says that if a procedure has the effect of denying or abridging the ability of a minority group to elect, to participate, or to elect a candidate of their choice, then it's presumptively, if you will, under the statute, racial discrimination. The problem is, factually, that's not true anymore. The discrepancies between voting, between white voting and black voting, correlates almost directly based upon party affiliation, not that the whites won't vote for any black and the blacks won't vote for any, don't support any white.
Yeah.
It's the fallacy, a statistical fallacy. Now, I will say this: when jingles is the primary interpretation of Section 5, when it was decided back in the 80s, the voting patterns were different. White Democrats did not vote for black Democrats. And so there was racially polarized voting, and that was not related to partisanship. And so that supported Jingles' finding that even inside the party, it was like being a Democrat but having a white primary. Well, yeah, you can be a Democrat, but we're not going to count your vote. And that's where we were in the early 80s. And what we're saying is, golly gee, I've accidentally got old. The 80s were 45 years ago, and half a century. And so anyway, that's the issue. Is the only way you can use race is to think if you've had a case where there was racial discrimination and you were not hired or you were fired because of your race. Okay, the only way to cure that is to do a racial remedy that says, no, you have to hire the white person back, or you have to hire the black person back because they were fired or unhired. So the remedy is racial, but they touch each other. The error, the discrimination, and the remedy are, if you will, hand in glove. And so what's happening under Section 2 is the proof of discrimination is this statistical anomaly between Democrat and Republican voting does not prove and does not hold up if you control for party affiliation. The difference is black voters generally vote Democrat, extremely high Democratic. Now, we've got a new administration that's changing these numbers, and America is changing these numbers. But they correlate with partisanship, and what you see is a white Democrat will support a black Democrat. There is no racial polarization, and that was another thing that the court was trying to receive information on and ask each counsel, all right, if this is the facts, how does it affect our remedy? And so I don't want to do a constitutional law test, but there were lots of these very specific legal issues in the case, and the argument was wide open. We were scheduled for 1 hour. We went almost 2.25 hours.
Wow.
The court just kept going. They had questions and they asked them, and we had a great presentation on the 14th and 15th and Section 2.
Yeah, I think it would be a good exercise in constitutional law to go back and listen to all of the arguments, and I certainly intend to do that. But I want to get back to another point here, Paul, that I think is very important. Even while this litigation was winding its way through the process, we called, you called. I know you and I had a conversation about it. Danielle did. We've been calling repeatedly for the legislature to call a special session and to go in and correct this. Either go back to the 2022 map or draw a map that's not a textbook racial gerrymander. The pushback that we've gotten from the legislators and I think even from the governor is that they have to wait on the Supreme Court to render a decision before they can take any action on this. Is that true, or should the legislature have gone in, even go in now, and try to make progress on this?
No, I think at this stage, because this case accidentally, historically, was in line, it has become the opportunity for the Supreme Court to readdress some of what we think are some of the excesses of Section 2 application. Because of that accident, I totally was in favor of just reenact a constitutional plan that is not racially gerrymandered, and then if someone drags you to the Supreme Court, when you arrive, you'll be on the right side. Instead of, I think I'm going to violate the Constitution as much as I can, and then arrive up there and not defend my work that I've done for 18 months. So yeah. I think that remedy is past us. I think at this stage, my recommendation to every legislator that listens is you were forced into this position. This was a dark chapter in what you were told about districting, but we're now at a different spot. Patience, leave it alone. There is no reason to go into a special session until we have a written opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court on the current state of affairs under Section 2 and the Constitution.
Yeah. Now you say, Paul, that the legislature was forced to do this, to draw this map. You know, there were 11 state senators in the state legislature and a host of state reps as well who voted against this map. So they stood up against it, obviously recognizing that it's constitutionally indefensible. And I think part of the reason as well was that they recognized that the threat that it posed to the balance of power in Congress with the razor-thin Republican majority there. So is it entirely accurate to say that the legislature was forced into this position either by the governor or by a federal judge?
I'm being nice, okay? They're grown. I know how we say it in the country. They're grown people. They're elected legislators. They have their right to vote as they see fit, and they voted as they saw fit. I commend those whose judgment revealed that this SB 8 construction should never have been enacted. I commend them. They were right. But I'm not giving any of those who voted in favor of it a pass for saying, golly gee, we were forced to do it. You're only forced to do is to get up in the morning and try to breathe and stay alive. Nobody told them they had to do this. They chose to do it, those that voted in favor of it.
And we've been in a position before, Paul, as you alluded to earlier, where a federal court ruled that this district was unconstitutional, prohibited it from being used. Yet 5-6 months later, Cleo Fields is sitting in the U.S. Congress nonetheless. So my question is this. Are we looking at a similar scenario now, depending upon when this ruling comes down and whether or not the Secretary of State or anyone else will be able to plausibly argue that we're not going to have time to administer an election? So Cleo Fields, the district has to stand for yet another term, or will we have time to do what's necessary?
We don't know. The Supreme Court could rule tomorrow, they won't. Or they could rule at the last week of June, which will be too late, likely too late. But it's also likely, they were informed, and I want to commend the Secretary of State, Nancy Landry, on her brief that she filed with the Supreme Court that detailed the election schedule problem that we have. And by doing that, the Supreme Court knows that there's an urgency. It's a very important issue, but there's also an urgency of practical right of voters to vote in constitutional structures that's upon them. And if we can and I think we've got more than a 50% chance that we're going to get a ruling out of them by the 1st of December. Okay. And not that they have to, but I think if you think of all the emergency items that have been recently going to the Supreme Court, they get to the Supreme Court, they're big issues, but they know what their time frame is. They know I've got to make a decision by this date because we're ruling about law in the real world. I think they will honor and recognize Louisiana's schedule. And if we get a decision out by December, the local district judge has the authority, the court has the authority to draw a remedy plan, or the legislature could at that point. But there are spirits among us that have other motives to do other things and will use a redistricting special session as a fig leaf to cover what they really want to do on other issues.
But if the governor, but on this though, but Paul, but the governor himself has the executive authority to limit the scope of a special session. If he calls it and says, we're going to limit the focus of it to simply redistricting, and you go in and you've got to draw a map that's constitutional, and it's not really it's really the primary responsibility, as you've told us on the show several times. It's the primary constitutional responsibility of the legislature to do this, right?
Oh, look, I didn't say there wasn't a right way to do it. I just said I feel more comfortable with good instructions, current good instruction from the U.S. Supreme Court, that the district court is more likely and quicker to be able to faithfully apply those and give the voters of Louisiana a constitutional districting plan.
Which court does it go back to, Paul? Which is it going to go back to Judge Dick?
No. Judge Dick's case is over.
Okay, so where will this go?
It goes back to our 3-judge panel that decided it was an unconstitutional gerrymander to begin with. They were sitting in Shreveport. They'll be somewhere either in Shreveport or Lafayette, but it's a district court 3-judge panel, and they will, recognizing the time frame that the state has, it will adopt a interim plan until the legislature does something different.
Fair enough.
It's going to be a question of how much time is available.
Yeah.
Depending on when the Supreme Court rules.
Paul, do you have any sense of how far-reaching this ruling will be? We've heard kind of in the news that it could impact up to 19 or 20 seats. Has your team kind of counted the number of seats that would flip as a result of this decision?
No, because we don't care. What we care about is we want constitutional, non-racial voting structure. But that report that 19 district change is, the source is very pro Section 2. So they're trying to create a scare that, oh, if you do away with this, we're going to have this tremendous difficulty. The answer is they don't know that anyway. Second, this court has lots of interim places, interim adjustments that they can make that report ignores. The answer is we are going to get a revised opinion out of the U.S. Supreme Court, one way or the other, and then we will know if it's going to impact existing legislators in the future. But also a great statistic that was given at the oral argument. After someone made the allegation of, oh, we're going to lose all of our minority representatives if we don't maintain the right to make racial districts, the Department of Justice said that there were 60 minority representatives in the House, and then only 19 or 12. It was less than a third are actually elected from majority minority districts. You don't have to racially gerrymander to get elected representatives that happen to be black or Hispanic or Asian. And so that's just scare tactic.
Do you think this heads off at the redistricting plans of places like California and New York?
Ask me that again. I had to disconnect the phone.
Do you think this heads off at the redistricting plans of Democratic states like New York and California, that they're trying to get more Democratic seats? Do you think this will interrupt those plans?
No, in fact, one of the issues that this court was reviewing yesterday was they've already handed down a decision that clearly says that under the Constitution, the states have the right to structure their elections. And they've held in a RUCHO, RUCHO, that federal courts do not have the jurisdiction to decide electoral structure because it is non-justiciable. The legislature and the states are what they call political parts of our constitutional federal structure. This political issue is not justiciable, cannot be brought into the court and say, oh, no, you didn't give the Republicans enough or you didn't give the Democrats. The answer is, and look, guys, let's have a little faith. This is a republic. We can have a king and he can tell us what to do, or we can have a republic and we can be proud, or we can unelect our representatives, but at least our vote and our representatives will be making our decisions about our electoral system. That's what the Calais case is about. Let us do it other than by race. And so the answer is going to be the legislators that are redrawing the districts, just like if they were making the death penalty or repealing the death penalty, they will be responsible to their voters for their chosen act. And so one is flying, these are flying parallel to each other. One won't impact the other.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great point. I'm so curious about this next question, Paul. If in January of 2024, the legislature had followed your recommendation and the recommendation of others and rejected SB 8 and gone in.
Or never have called it and go to trial on the existing plan.
Yeah. What if they had done everything that you had recommended them that they do? How much taxpayer money do you think would have been saved? And all of our resources that would have been devoted to this? I mean, when would this have ended? And That's a question. I mean, it just seems like this has cost so much time, effort, energy, and money to do this.
Oh, it has, and when you have funded government agencies like the Attorney General or the Secretary of State, other than having to hire special counsel to litigate, that money is going to get spent, and those employees are going to continue to do whatever work falls into their agency. So on the operational level, I don't think it changed much, other than it limited what they couldn't get to because of what they're having to get to.
Yeah.
If you create your own mess, you spend more time cleaning up instead of planting flowers. And so this is going to cost the state some attorney fees, and has already cost them their own attorney fees that they've had to pay outside. And but that to me is simply the penalty for choosing to knowingly violate the Constitution.
Yeah. Paul, you told us on the show one time, and I believe you mentioned this in your testimony when this bill was being debated, that this map that is at issue now is 80 or 85% of a previous map that was previously declared unconstitutional. Could you elaborate on that? And I think you were involved in that as well.
Oh yeah, that was the fallback position after they did the Z district, that is amongst the three worst racial gerrymanders in the history of gerrymandering under Section 2. They enacted what we called the slash, or what the judge called the slash, and when the district court looked at the new one and looked at the old one that had already been affirmed as a racial gerrymander, they said, "Isn't this almost the same one we've already held?"
Exactly.
The answer was, when I said the legislators chose to do what they did, they chose to do what they did.
Yeah.
And was it defensible? Man, it would be like St. Augustine playing the Saints. The Saints aren't a great NFL team, but I bet you they can beat St. Aug. And the legislature knew that this thing had such tremendous constitutional difficulty that they made their choice because they made their choice.
Yeah. And of course, as you said earlier, people can speculate. We have our suspicions as to why they did what they did. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that as difficult politically as it may have been for some of them to do the right thing, constitutionally and legally, it was clear cut in your view, and probably in the view of many other constitutional lawyers.
That's exactly right. And the governor and the attorney general stood up and said, "We have to do this,"
which is absolutely not true. So none of this really, this probable outcome here, certainly the decision that the 3-judge panel made in 2024, this really doesn't surprise you.
Well, look, if you take gasoline and pour it on your front porch and set it on fire, don't tell me when the firemen get there that I didn't mean to set my house on fire. No, the answer was, I know what you did. Now, you may be sorry you have nowhere to sleep. You may be sorry that you're about to get good and embarrassed because everybody's going to know you burned your house down.
Yeah.
Answer was, they knew what the one thing I do want to assure everyone is the political class, and I don't mean this in a bad sense, they know what they're doing. Don't think that they're a bunch of grade school kids. Don't think they're too busy living their lives that they don't know what the legal consequences, the constitutional consequences, the political consequences of acting and not acting, what they cause. These people know what they're doing, and they're responsible for the results of what they do. There's a principle under law that says that when you're proving why a legislature, a corporate group act, when you try to prove what their intent was, one principle of law is that a legislature group is presumed to know to intend the natural consequences of their own act. You can't say, when I turned off the lights, I didn't know it was going to go dark. No, you can say anything, but you judge them by the natural consequences of their act. They chose this unconstitutional path from the governor to the attorney general down into the leadership in the legislature. And look, it's a dark chapter. It's a bad chapter. We closed it yesterday.
Yeah.
Now let's get on with governing Louisiana with a little more pride and a little more constitutional fervor.
Yeah.
Paul, can I take you back to 22 when the original case went before Judge Dick, and they had the opportunity to fight that case and, to show up in court and potentially go to the Supreme Court? Is there some unintended positive consequence that happened? Like, are we in a better position now as a state to get something out of the Supreme Court that positively changes the direction or the structure of redistricting, the law around redistricting for states? Like, was there an unintended consequence that's positive by them not taking this to the Supreme Court back then?
I don't think so at all, and here's
Okay.
why. They arrived without clean hands.
Yeah.
If they would have defended the constitutional district, then we would be in front of the court today saying, Your Honors, here's the constitutional plan that we enacted, and a lower court said we should do it racially. We believe the district court was wrong, and therefore we can stand up and be against the judge's decision to make us racially gerrymander. It's laughable to say that we're in a better position. That issue, if they'd have just stood up and said, nope, you can't. We honestly believe constitutionally we're not going to racially gerrymander. And had they done that, that same case could have been, that same district would have been what the court was looking at to say, this plan that is racially gerrymandered by the district court, and I'm talking about Judge Dick's district court, is too racial, and this district that the Louisiana legislature enacted and defending now as being constitutional is under question. And they would be there asking every one of these same questions, every one of these issues under the 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, and Section 2 would all be on the table, but we would be standing up consistently, constitutionally, and honorably defending the Constitution, not trying to explain why we violated it.
Yeah.
So
and
a
if
lot
that
of
had occurred, Garrett Graves, in all likelihood, would still be in the U.S. Congress, and we wouldn't have Cleo Fields in Congress right now.
and a lot less political capital would have been spent, I think.
All of those are ramifications that forced us, for other reasons, to defend the Constitution. And I'm going to say this, look, I've done redistricting over 30, for a period from the mid-90s to now, 30 years. I've represented Republicans who thought they were being disadvantaged because of racial gerrymandering, and I've represented Democrats that believe they were being unfairly affected on their vote because of a racial gerrymander. My mission is I want voters to get compact, rational, non-racial districts. And I don't care whether it helps the Democrats or the Republicans. What I want is to help the voter.
Yeah. And so, Paul, there's at least a reasonable likelihood, is there not, that the court may look at, go back and do just what we were just talking about. Look at the 2022 district, the original district, and say, this is a constitutional district, and this is the one that we're recommending. So we end up right back where we started. Is that possible?
It's possible, but you're not back where you started. You've had 2 years of clean.
Well, that's true. You can't unwind that clock. But in terms of the district.
Ultimately, we will end up with a constitutional district, and we've unfortunately had to walk this path to get to it, had we, instead of standing up and defending it. Yeah. Because remember this, even if we'd have lost, if the Louisiana would have stood up and defended the district that was in effect in 2022, the issuance of that stay, which decides whether or not, once that court, and let's assume that the Middle District Judge Dick was going to find that our 2022, the original plan, what was violative of Section 2. So she's going to enact a new remedy plan. The same Attorney General that went to the U.S. Supreme Court and asked for a stay so they could use the unconstitutional district could have made the same motion to say, look, this is a close call. Supreme Court, please stay the new plan by Judge Dick and let us use what we've enacted in 2024 election, and then we'll sort it out based upon the traditional plan. The same procedural steps would have occurred, except the stay that the governor and the attorney general got to preserve Cleo Fields District would have been used to preserve our constitutional district.
Right.
So it was a two-step backwards. They failed to defend, and then they failed to defend the right to use it in the interim.
What an absolutely interesting case that will have.
The answer is they would be better off simply saying, we're sorry.
Yeah.
We made a bad call here, and we would have been better off simply defending on the merits our district that we enacted, that we believe was proper for Louisiana, and we'll take it to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah.
They blinked.
And that's obviously what Speaker Mike Johnson as well recommended back in January 2024. Paul, do you recall what the answer was to the question about, somebody asked, maybe one of the justices, whoever it was, it's curious that you seem to have changed your position here at the 11th hour. Can you say why? Do you remember what the answer was? To the Attorney General? Okay, that's what I thought.
The answer is they changed their mind.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say the penalty, the possible penalty, the ramification is it sure discounts your argument thereafter.
Yeah.
They became much less relevant. The only way to be less relevant defending it was to switch after filing 4 briefs at the U.S. Supreme Court on one side and then filing a new brief going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
The answer was because they represented a state in the union, they were given due respect in front of the Supreme Court, regardless of what they did.
Yeah. And no question that they probably suffered a diminishment of credibility in the minds of the justices. There probably is very little question about that. Well, Paul, thank you for clarifying these issues for us today. Thank you for being here with us. And thanks for all of your hard work. I think that you have been involved now officially in every significant case involving racial gerrymandering in our state's history. Is that a fair statement?
At the congressional level, yes. Now, there's other cases, like there's 2 pending right now that may result in racial gerrymandering, but they're being pursued under Section 2. And so those district judges are trying to make the decision on whether what Section 2 requires the state mandates the state to create more racial majority minority districts, and they've been stayed until this case, Calais, is decided by the Supremes. I haven't been involved at the district, and I was involved in suing to set aside the race districting that we have for district judges in the state's district judges. A large number of them are elected where we've intentionally created black districts and white districts and elected judges, but then the judges have authority over everybody, even though you don't get to vote for them.
Yeah.
That ship will come in soon.
And maybe we can have you back on to talk specifically about that issue.
And look at our recent administration-supported redistricting of the Louisiana Supreme Court. Oh dear me!
Yeah. Paul
One
Hurd.
step at a time.
Paul Hurd, the one and only. God bless you, sir, and we'll visit again soon.
All right, great to be with you, and y'all keep up your good work as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Paul. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Chris, it's just such an embarrassment that our executive officials would, what Paul is saying is that they betrayed us. They completely betrayed us, and they were operating in direct defiance of the Constitution. And then when they got caught out, they said, "Oh, just kidding. We changed teams."
Yeah, that's exactly what occurred. And what I wanted to bring out through Paul, Danielle, is that they really don't have any justification for it.
No.
As politically difficult as it probably was to go against the governor, legally and constitutionally, it was as clear as day. And Paul made that very, very clear. And so it's really no surprise to me. I'm sure probably not a real surprise to him that we're where we are now, on the verge of having that district declared unconstitutional and maybe the Voting Rights Act Section 2 entirely. But I think we can't emphasize enough that the legislature exactly right. It was a colossal betrayal. And I think, frankly, and this is based on information that I've received from a number of people who know, it was based directly upon pressure from the governor because of his animus for then Congressman Garrett Graves, and also because he owed Cleo Fields political favor from the governor's race. And I believe that probably is the genesis of it. And for the governor to come back now and say that the only reason why we're on the verge of getting relief here is because of him and the attorney general, and to completely disregard the fact that Paul Hurd is the one who pulled this cart all the way to the finish line, and that they're the ones who changed their position at the 11th hour, to me, just really strains credulity like I've never seen.
Yeah. We were trying to come up with words to describe how insane that pretzel logic is by Governor Landry on this one, and it's absolutely indescribable. I did really appreciate having Paul explain so succinctly that we could have gotten here and their hands could have been clean. We could have come to the same outcome here at the Supreme Court probably a year ago, if not sooner, had they followed the correct steps and truly fought for what was right, what was constitutional, what was in what would have given voters the opportunity to have their voice heard in a constitutional way. But they chose not to. They chose not to pursue that.
Yes.
And we're here because they went in complete violation of that. Yet now they want to do a victory lap, and that is insane.
Yes. And now they want to be upwind of the blast, as I like to say, upwind of the blast, and save face on this. So what our legislature did, Danielle, just to round out here, was constitutionally indefensible. And very importantly, also, even though this is not a principal concern of Paul's from the legal standpoint, it was also politically indefensible, because as I explained when testifying before this committee, we still have a razor thin majority in the United States Congress. Then I think it was 2. Now it may be 3. I think we picked up a couple of seats. But the bottom line is what our governor did and what our legislature did in the face of, against the Constitution, completely against the Constitution, was threaten and jeopardize the balance of power in the United States Congress. And we have to make sure that we always remind people of that. They not only violated the Constitution, they placed in jeopardy the Republican majority in the Congress. And I know that a lot of people, don't like Republicans, and they think that it's just a uniparty and there's no difference between the two. And to some extent, they're right. But let me tell you something. There is a massive difference between having a Democrat majority in Congress and a Republican majority in Congress. And our governor and our legislature gravely jeopardized that by passing SB 8. And we have to remember that and emphasize that. And people need to remember that when they decide who they're going to be voting for at reelection.
Yeah, and I also really appreciate the fact that Paul brought out that the legislature has no fig leaf to hide behind when it comes to did they understand the implications of the way they voted. That under in the eyes of the court, no matter how they vote, it's assumed that they understood. So if they didn't, it's their own fault. And if they did, it's still their own fault.
Yes, exactly. It's called either actual or constructive knowledge. At a minimum, they had presumptive and constructive knowledge of what they were doing. But in this case, because of the testimony before the committee, because of the way this district looked, because of the fact that it was an obvious racial gerrymander, they had actual knowledge of what they were doing, actual knowledge, and they did it anyway. And as we talked about earlier, I think we know why they did it. And Paul even said, the governor was just elected. It was the first session. He was at the height of his political power. And that's one of the reasons, Danielle, why I admire. So, and I know, you kind of chastised me the other day for giving them too much credit for it. Yeah. But I still have respect for the 11 state senators and the host of Republican representatives as well, who had the courage to vote against this, despite the prevailing political winds. And we'll mention on a show one day. I know we've already talked about the state senators, but we will name the representatives who voted against this as well, because they deserve credit also.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe we should do that while looking at the map, so we can know which ones were likely politically influenced by their vote and which ones were maybe voting on conscience.
Which puts them in a rare category for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to say that there weren't people voting on conscience in this, that were in Garrett Graves' district, but it has to be taken into consideration. But all that said, Chris, I think it was a great discussion with Paul today. I always love having him on. He is just a wealth of knowledge, and as you said, he's a total hero for our state.
Absolutely. Love him. So glad we have him. What a treasure. What a resource. You have any announcements today, Danielle?
I do. We'll be back here on Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central with Mark Lucas, longtime friend of the show. He is with Veteran Action, and he will be talking about some important legislation that he is supporting, hoping to get passed at the congressional level in support of veterans.
And a wealth of knowledge. And of course, Mark has been on before, so very much look forward to having him back.
Yeah.
As always, Danielle, I want to thank all of our listeners as we continue to grow across the state. I want to encourage people to continue to subscribe, listen to, and support the State of Freedom as we go forward, spreading liberty, just like we did today. Knowledge is power. Let's remember, and it's such an honor to be partnered with you on the State of Freedom. It's just a tremendous honor. I thank God for it every day.
I know. We get to have so much fun. It's a total blessing, Chris. I feel the same way. You have a great one.
You too. God bless.
God bless. The secret to losing weight 2 times faster has gone viral. See the transformations hundreds of thousands of men, women, and teens are experiencing around the world with the Slenderize drops. These homeopathic hormone-balancing drops are proven to control appetite, support thyroid function, improve energy, boost mood, and increase metabolic rate. To learn more about the drops or other incredible natural wellness and lifestyle products, email me at danielle@freedomstate.us or visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Hey, Danielle Walker here. I'd love for you to check out my online boutique, Lux Lion. My mission for Lux Lion is to showcase innovative African designers and sustainable mission-driven brands. To do that, I bring you stunningly beautiful handcrafted jewelry and accessories from some of my absolute favorite places on earth. Small batch wholesale for storefronts is also available. Join me in celebrating African artistry and shop now at luxlion.us. Use promo code FREEDOM for an additional 10% off your purchase. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit LACAG.org. We'll see you next time. God bless. If you're looking to invest in physical precious metals or convert your 401k to a precious metals-backed IRA, please consider making your investment with our trusted partner, Metal Stacks. Their prices regularly beat the big sites and they have no credit card fees or minimums. Shipping is free for orders over $500. Just visit metalstacks.com/dwalker or get there from our website, freedomstate.us. If you're interested in the IRA conversion, drop me a message at danielle@freedomstate.us and I can get you connected with their white glove service. Hey, Danielle Walker here. I'd love for you to check out my online boutique, Lux Lion. My mission for Lux Lion is to showcase innovative African designers and sustainable mission-driven brands. To do that, I bring you stunningly beautiful handcrafted jewelry and accessories from some of my absolute favorite places on earth. Small batch wholesale for storefronts is also available. Join me in celebrating African artistry and shop now at luxlion.us. Use promo code FREEDOM for an additional 10% off your purchase. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit LACAG.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.